too?
Yes, but I will take that Zoom recording and put it on the website.
And it says recording now, right?
Great.
Okay.
So I would like to welcome everyone to this unique and original program. I'm Carolyn Bojack, PTSA president, where we're able to use the talents of our membership to bring this timely and useful program to the Mount Hebron community, to parents, to staff, and to students. It's relevant to the entire community. Advocacy is at the core of PTSA's mission, and I am as eager as everyone to learn from tonight's presenter. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Erin Camp-Mansour. Erin.
Hi there, I'm Erin. Let's see, I want to share my screen for my slides here. So let me get my screen up here so I get my presentation. Everyone, I hope you will give me a little patience. This is the first time we've done this presentation, and I don't do a lot of presenting. So hopefully this will go smoothly, but you guys are kind of our pilot audience for this presentation. And so we'll hope everything goes well for technical and other reasons. All right. So Carolyn, can you see my screen and my slides?
Yes, I sure can.
Great. Okay. So everyone, welcome. Tonight is, we're going to have a topic of creating change, advocacy, and the state legislative process. I'm Erin Camp-Mansour, and I'm the first vice president for the Mount Hebron High School PTSA. My email's on here, so if after the session you want to talk to me more, feel free to get in touch with me after the session. Whoops. There we go. All right. So, so just a little bit of background about me. I'm a parent of 3 Howard County Public School teens at Mount Hebron High School and Patapsco Middle School. And I'm also a legislative aide for State Senator Clarence Lamb at the Maryland General Assembly. I'm also a community activist, and I advocate for civic engagement in a variety of volunteer positions and roles. So tonight, I'm going to share a little bit of what I know about as a legislative aide and a community activist with you, and hopefully help any parents, students, teachers, anybody who's interested in getting engaged on either an issue or learning more about what happens at the Maryland General Assembly, to help you all to get engaged, to be able to navigate the Maryland General Assembly website and learn, and hopefully help support our democracy, which we're going to talk about how this fits in. So as the announcement that you probably saw for this event said, we're wondering whether you've ever had something going on in your community or the state that you felt strongly that should be changed, or something that you felt really wasn't going the way you wanted or wished everyone supported. And if you've ever wished you could take an issue important to you and change the politics or the laws related to that issue, I think you can, and I want to help you do it. And we can do it together, because it's really great to do. You really need to do this together with other people who've done it and other people who are maybe interested in the same issues that you're concerned with. And so this is meant to give you an overview kind of why we think this is important. And as a PTSA, we're one of those civic associations that gets active and helps support our democracy. So, so for everybody listening, just in case you're not really familiar with the term civic organization or civic engagement, I just wanted to clarify a little bit what that means. So a civic organization really just means a community-based company, a club, a committee association, or a corporation. It's basically any organization or group that acts in concert, composed of people who are members of that group that get together on a voluntary basis and establish, things for further educational or charitable, maybe religious or cultural reasons. So that could be the PTSA, that's a civic organization. It could be your church group. It could be, a professional association that you're in. And civic engagement has to do with working to make a difference in your civic life or your community through a combination of developing skills and values and motivation to make the difference on that issue for that group. It also means promoting the quality of life in your community through both political and non-political processes. So some of the things I'm going to talk to you about have to do with how to engage with the Maryland State Assembly, which is a legislative body. And why is civic engagement important? In the past few years, Americans' participation in civic life, or that civic engagement that I was talking about, has declined rather dramatically. According to a Harvard professor, over the last 25 years, American participation in public meetings is down by about 35%, and the participation in clubs and civic organizations has been cut by more than half. The bad news is that if you know Alexis de Tocqueville, for teachers or students who might be out there, and anybody else who happens to know de Tocqueville, who's a political theorist, he pointed out in his Democracy in America that the key to making American democracy work is our willingness to create and maintain a variety of civic organizations. And there's also been kind of a weakened civic engagement over the years that you can kind of see in the complexity of the issues. Globalization and kind of the complexity of the issues we're dealing with has led some people to kind of pull back or feel it's hard to know which direction to go because of how complicated and difficult the issues seem to have become. And some of us don't have a lot of time sometimes to read the newspaper and get educated on these complex issues. So we kind of pull back from our engagement. So tonight we're gonna talk about some things, but really mostly tonight is about learning about the process and maybe getting ready to start looking into a particular issue or concern that you might have, and how to get together with a group and get active on that issue. So I wanted to set some kind of expectations and ground rules, just because sometimes when people get engaged on hot issues that are very complex and maybe emotional, or people have strong views on both sides, it can get kind of tense, or you might get into a discussion that's heated. We're not going to do that tonight. That's not what tonight's about. We're really just going to be exploring what are some of the issues you might be interested in. We're not going to debate which side of the issue you're on. We're just going to start learning the process for what might you be interested in working on, and then how would you get engaged on that issue with the state General Assembly, or on state legislative matters, mostly, because that's my area of expertise. So I just want to make sure we all understand that our community and our opinions are very diverse. So we want to make sure when some of these topics do come up where you might have an opinion in one way or another, we're just going to respect that there are going to be some different views. That's the point. We're picking topics that are a point of discussion and debate that we think is important, and we're going to have to work on together as a community, not tonight, but as a community. So this particular session is not really a forum for that debate. It's a nonpartisan workshop. PTSA and our community is a nonpartisan, bipartisan group of parents whose main goals, and our teachers, are education and having successful schools and students. So really, we're going to try to work together as a group to kind of support those things we agree with, or find that community together and explore it. Sometimes people avoid civic engagement, like I said, because they're afraid of conflict. And I want this to be really pleasant and productive and be mostly about building knowledge and skills and confidence and community. And I think it's really exciting, and it's great to participate in the democratic process. So I hope that you'll find the fun part of that. And it is great to work with other people who share your views and want to work on something together and accomplish things. So I think there's a really satisfying element of it that I hope others can get engaged and start to feel how that goes. So I do want to ask and check in with you guys. What do you hope to get out of tonight's session? And what are some examples of maybe some issues that you might like to get engaged on to take some kind of action to change or support in your community? And again, these are more issues. You don't have to say what side of the issue you are on, or you can share it, and that's totally fine too. The goal eventually would be, if you have a particular issue you'd like to get more engaged in, that after this session, we'll have maybe some advocacy teams that I can help folks who are interested on a particular issue and a particular side of the issue can get together and start building, their kind of perspective and getting engaged with maybe their representatives to support a particular side of an issue. So is there any kind of issue that folks have been kind of experiencing in their community that they think they might want to get more engaged in or learn more about, and maybe advocate for, some kind of change or some kind of policy? So this is one where anybody who has who's willing to share, you're welcome to go ahead and jump in. Carolyn, is there anything that you're interested in getting involved in, or any issues?
Well, I know there are a lot of issues currently up before the board that people are taking sides on and different groups are advocating over, including funding for education, school resource officers, or the police officers in the school buildings. And how about just the future of virtual learning in Howard County? What is the spring semester going to look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some of the things, especially in our PTSA group, where we have some concerns that relate to kids and issues that affect the schools. And some of those policies are made at the board level, the Board of Education. Some have impact on budgets that relate to the county council. And then some things are statewide issues that have to do with state funding and formulas and those kinds of things. So some relate to school policies and things related to our kids in our schools. So definitely those would be things that we could look into further for how we could help. So these are just some examples that I thought of and that we just mentioned. Other things would be not related to schools, but if you want to get involved more with your legislators on things like social justice and equity issues, food security for our community, small business support in our community, or mental health resources for those who need it. Those are all issues that obviously lots of folks have concerns about, and some feel that there are things that we might be able to do by changing laws or budgets or those kinds of things that would could be helpful or important. And so those would be things that I could help you get organized on or get active on if you're interested. So like I said, I just wanted to clarify that there's sometimes people get a little confused because there's different kind of areas and levels of government, and sometimes it's a little hard to figure out where your issue or where your concern, which group you should kind of approach about that issue. So I just want to touch on kind of four main areas, one of which is state legislation, and the others have to do with things like Board of Education policies. So the Board of Education and the County Council are two bodies that kind of oversee policy and legislation related to some of the things that we mentioned and some of the things parents are concerned about or citizens are concerned about. So the Board of Education oversees educational matters that affect Howard County, and they have 8 members, 7 are elected by the voters, 2 are at-large members, and 5 are now recently elected by their councilmanic district, so the district that overlaps with their council district, their county council district. They have 4-year terms, and there's also a student member of the board who has kind of limited voting rights. That student votes on some things and not on others, and that person serves for 1 year. The county council serves as the county's legislative branch. So we have, for those of you who are familiar with government lessons, there's the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of most of our levels of government. And the county council is the legislative branch of the county government. And it includes a zoning board and a liquor board as well. They function that way. They have 5 members and they're elected from 5 separate districts, and they serve 4-year terms. And there's a 3-term limit on council members. I've put in here the websites for those 2 bodies. And if you don't know who your representative is, on the Board of Education, the schools are assigned to an individual. And so if you go to their website, you can find out our school is under Christina Delmont Small, is responsible for Mount Hebron and most of, I think, our schools in the neighborhood. And for county council, I think mostly our district is in District 1 and 5. But if you go to the county website, there's a way you can click and find your council member. So if you're not sure who that is, probably a good person to start with, because if you have a concern, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and find out which one is your county council member and get their email. And you can send your question of what you're concerned about to them, and they'll either be able to help you with it themselves or certainly be able to direct you to the right person to work with. And that's part of their constituent services, which we all do, and is a very important part of what councils and the legislature does, as well as passing laws. So mostly I'm going to focus tonight on the Maryland General Assembly, since I work for the General Assembly, which is the legislative body for the state. And they're directly represented by the electorate. There's 47 districts. In Howard County, we have 3. Our district, we're in District 9A. Technically, the high school is in District 9A, which is part of District 9. 9B is Ellicott City, and people may live in 9A or B. I think that most of us who have kids at Mount Hebron would be in one of those 2 districts, legislative districts. So if somebody asks you what's your legislative district, meaning your state legislative district, it would be this District 9A or B. If they ask you a council district, county council, that would be maybe District 1 or 5 probably. So the General Assembly is responsible for enacting laws and proposing amendments to the Maryland Constitution. Also, they meet, regular session is 90 days a year. So the elected legislators are considered citizen legislators, meaning most of them have another job, professional job that they do for most of the year, but for 3 months a year, they're fairly full-time legislators. And the rest of the year, they're part-time legislators because they work all year long. But full-time, they're probably doing something else. Like my boss, Senator Lamb, is a doctor, public health doctor at Johns Hopkins. And he actually does some of that during session too. And currently with COVID, obviously, he's very busy with all kinds of things related to legislation and working as a doctor at Hopkins. So the session lasts technically 90 days. So bills are introduced and have to be completed and processed within 90 days, starting in the second Wednesday of January. And so by early to mid-January, we start session and then wraps up in early April. Last year, it was only 71 days because for the first time since the Civil War, we closed almost 2 weeks, about 2 weeks early because of COVID, a little bit more than 2 weeks. So a lot of legislation died because we ran out of time. Most of our legislation's passed in the last few weeks of session. So there's a lot of legislation that people may have wanted last year that just didn't get enough time to get completed. So this year we'll be doing a lot of work on that. So it starts in January. We handle about 2,500 pieces of legislation in that 90 days. So it's a kind of a mad dash to handle everything from the state's operating budgets and capital budgets to individual bills on various issues. I'm not going to get into the United States Congress, but just to be aware, some things, if they're more national legislation that you've heard of on a federal level, then those bills are handled by Congress, and that would be with our representatives to Congress and our senators. I believe most of us, if not all of us, are in the representative district of Representative Mfume, and it's District 7 for our representative. And we have two senators, Senator Cardin and Senator Van Hollen, who represent the state of Maryland. So if you have issues for federal legislation, then you would contact those representatives. And I put the website here so you could check that out if you want to locate your members and get in touch with them. So the next thing I wanted to go over was everything about the state legislature is on our website. And we're really lucky to have a very open system in Maryland where this is the same system that I use at work to help Senator Lamb do all of his work. And it's also available to the public to use for everything they would need. So it's a great resource, and I'm just going to go over a few things tonight. I'm going to start with this homepage and giving a little bit of an overview, and then there are several videos that have been prepared that give a really good walkthrough of the main features of the webpage and how you can get information and learn more about what's going on at the General Assembly. So I'm going to go through some of those features. So this is the homepage. When you go to mgaleg.maryland.gov, you will find, or if you just Google Maryland General Assembly, you can come to this webpage. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that there's a video tutorials button. And I think just to be consistent and make sure I don't forget anything that I might want to walk you through, we're going to go through a couple of the videos. They're pretty short, and they're on the main features that you would need if you wanted to use a website. I may pause the video here and there just to add a few comments. And after we finish the video, I'll give anybody who has questions a chance to ask some questions, and we'll definitely have time at the end of the presentation and this session for more discussion about some of these topics as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do the introduction to the Maryland General Assembly website, and definitely keep track of any questions, and after it's over, I'll ask for any questions I can add to, and then we can do a couple other of the topics as well.
Welcome to the Maryland General Assembly website. With the fast-paced environment here at the Maryland General Assembly, it's important to be able to quickly find data regarding bills, hearing schedules, proceedings, and all manner of legislative information. This website is built to help you do just that. So let's get started. Clicking the Maryland General Assembly logo at the top of any page on the site will bring you to the home page. In the top right corner, there is a text box for searching bills. Simply type in the bill number and press enter or click the magnifying glass.
I'm just pausing it for a second here. You'll notice when you enter those bill numbers, there's an SB and an HB are the options for bill numbers. Sometimes if you see an article in the newspaper, it might have the bill number for a state piece of legislation. If you know what it is, you can come in and that'll take you to a page that'll show you information. When you enter it, usually bill numbers have 2 letters, an SB for the Senate and HB for the House, and then 4 digits. So, but when you enter it in the search field, you actually don't need the leading zeros. So if it's SB 0001, if you enter SB1, the system understands and will take you to where you need to go. And keep in mind too, that when you enter in this bill search, it's gonna go to the current legislative year. So if you search for a bill for right now, if you go to the website, it'll be searching the 2021 session. And currently there are no bills yet, so you won't get an answer. A little bit later, we'll see that you can use the search and archives feature to look at last year's session, which is 2020. And then if you enter the bills from that session, you'll be able to see the ones. But which session year you're in is important, because if you, this particular field is just for the current session, which right now is not open quite yet.
This will open the bill page with bill status information. Also at the top of every page is a navigation bar, which gives you quick access to the main areas of content on the website: members, committees, meetings, legislation, budget, laws, and floor actions. Publications, related links, and more information about each content area can be found in these menus. As you click on the different subjects, you will see the content displayed below the navigation bar. Also, the menu items for that subject will appear on the left with the name of the content area underlined in the navigation bar. The first thing that will probably catch your eye is a carousel. This is where you will see important legislative news related to the Maryland General Assembly. Just click the link on the graphic to connect you to the information, or use the menu on the right to jump to the content that interests you. Below the carousel, you'll find session information, including status of the Maryland General Assembly and links to commonly requested information about legislation, like how many bills have been introduced in the Senate, how about the House. Below the session information, you'll find a listing of all the meetings scheduled for the day, organized by Senate and House, and a third list for other calendars. Some helpful hints. No matter what link you follow, if you ever find yourself lost on the website, look to the navigation bar for the underlined heading. If you select a link to another website or document, that site or information will appear in a new tab, making it easy to return to the prior page you were viewing. We hope you enjoy the site. In other videos, we'll show you how to search members, search bills, find proceedings, and view the hearing schedule. We hope that this video helps you to become more comfortable with the site to find the information you need. If you have any questions or comments, go to the footer at the bottom of the page and select Contact Us. Click Send Feedback to send an email to webmaster@mgadls.state.md.us. Thank you for visiting the Maryland General Assembly.
So that's like the introduction to the website and gives you an idea of kind of some of the content that's on the page. I think the next thing I want to go through is I do want to go through an understanding of the bill page, because that gives you some more information about kind of the aspects of information in the bills that are on the website, and kind of how the committees work and how testimony works. Are there any questions right now about the introduction section? I'm going to take that to be no questions yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do the understanding a bill page tutorial.
There are so many ways to navigate to the information page of a bill. Whether you search directly or found your way there by following some other trail of information, the bill page contains all the information about a bill in one place. Let's take a look at one now. I'm just going to use the search and archive section of the MGA website to find House Bill 48. From session 2019. On this page, I can quickly view the status of the bill. Here, the timeline shows me that the bill has passed both chambers and was sent to the governor for approval. Clicking on the timeline will open the history detail for this bill. I can see the title of the bill, Esports Act. There are links to the sponsors of the bill. If I wanted more information about one of the sponsors, I would just click their name. Below the sponsors is the status of the bill. This shows that this bill was approved by the governor. Next is a link to the analysis of the bill. Clicking this would open the Fiscal and Policy Note PDF for the bill in a new browser tab. This is followed by a short synopsis description of the bill and the committees the bill is assigned to. Clicking on the committee names will take you to the archive listing for that committee for that session year. You can also access media for the bill when it is discussed in a committee hearing. When media is available, an icon that links to the media page for the hearing will appear next to the committee name. Clicking these will take you directly to the time in the meeting when the bill is being discussed. Finally, the bill history, which includes the committee votes, file code, subjects, and statutes can be displayed by selecting the down arrow next to each section name to display the related information. To collapse this section, simply click the arrow again. The bill page contains all of the relevant information you need to know about a bill and can link you to additional supporting documents and media for that bill. If you have any questions or comments, go to the footer at the bottom of the page and select Contact Us. Click Send Feedback to send an email to webmaster@mgadls.state.md.us. Thank you for visiting the Maryland General Assembly.
So those are two kind of videos that I find really helpful just to get oriented on the website and how to find information. So another kind of resource that I use that I think is really helpful in understanding kind of the process flow of how bills go through the General Assembly is available on the homepage at the bottom. You'll see that there's an About the General Assembly link. And when you open that, it has some general information about how things work. And then under a legislative process, it has a really good kind of just 2-page explanation of how a bill becomes a law, essentially, in the General Assembly. And I'm not going to go over the details here, but I wanted to make sure you knew where it was. And so that if you're teachers or students or parents who kind of want to just get a quick overview of how things are introduced in the General Assembly and how they become a bill. This is basically the main idea. And just so you get kind of the gist, if you had an issue that you really wanted some kind of law to change, you would basically interact and find your legislator in the General Assembly. You would enter your address in that finder link that I talked about earlier, and it would tell you who your senators and your state delegates are. And then you could reach out to them by email and talk to them about their bill. Any bill can be introduced in either the House or the Senate first. It has to go through both houses to be passed as a bill. But the reason it says first chamber and second is that it could start in the House and go to the Senate, or you could start it in the Senate and it can go to the House. A lot of bills sometimes are what's called cross-filed, which means there's actually identical bills started in the House and the Senate, and they both go through at the same time, which helps, it just facilitates a quicker processing of the bill sometimes when you do that. So sometimes you may reach out to your senator or your delegate, and there may be a bill in both houses that's the same bill, but you might have to track both and maybe go to hearings or submit testimony on both because you're not really sure which one's going to kind of make it all the way through the process. So basically it's introduced and there's a first reading, which just means that the General Assembly is aware of this bill and there's a draft and it's put in officially for consideration. And then it goes to a committee. So once your bill has gone to a committee, you know which committee you can check and which members are on that committee that would have a lot more influence on what's going to happen to that bill. The first hurdle for any kind of bill is to get through committee. If the committee doesn't refer it to the floor for a vote, then it doesn't go anywhere. And so first you have to have testimony in the committee hearings to convince the committee to vote it favorably for that bill, get it to the vote on the floor. And then if it passes the floor vote, after the third reading is the passage, that final passage. Second reading is a period where they consider it and there might be amendments on the floor. They might make some amendments and then ultimately they'll have a final vote on the floor of the Senate or the House. And then it'll go to the other house. So the first chamber will start this process, then it goes to the other chamber. If there are two different versions of the bill in the House and the Senate, if they pass different versions, it'll go to be considered in a conference committee, and a group well, they can either accept it or they can take it to a conference committee, and they somehow have to make the two bills, if they're different, reconciled so they can get a final vote. And then it would go to the governor, who can either sign it and pass it or approve it, or he can veto it. In which case they have to wait till the next legislative session, which is 9 months later, to reconsider the veto and try to override it. So that's the legislative process. And this is a nice document if you're trying to understand or explain the legislative process. Another site I wanted to make sure folks are aware of is this link at the top right. It says Legislative Services. And if you go to the Department of Legislative Services, there's some more really useful information here, especially if you're doing research or you want to get information on a bill. If you go to the Library tab, this is the library that the General Assembly staff use. They send emails to this libr.mlis.state.md.us link. But the library is available to the public as well. So if you have questions or concerns about a topic and you think that it relates to state legislation, you can send an email or call this number and get more information from a librarian at the Maryland General Assembly Department of Legislative Services, and they can help you do research or figure out what you're looking for. The legislative process link I just mentioned here is here as well. And there's a variety of jobs too here if you're interested, if you're a student or a teacher or a parent or somebody from the public. There are employment opportunities at the DLS as well, and those are posted here. So if people are looking for understanding what kinds of jobs people do, if they are interested in politics or policy or any of the other kind of professional jobs that people do at the General Assembly, you can check that out here too. As well as a variety of publications and data and things that the Department of Legislative Services does for the General Assembly. So I'm just going to go back to the homepage feature here and just let you know a few basic topics that we touched on. So if you're looking for your member, you can use the Find Representatives feature from the members and locate your member. Also, if you, when you do that, you can see, like, for example, we're in District 9A. If you select that from the map, you can see that Senator Katie Fry Hester is our senator in this area, and our delegates are Delegate Trent Kittleman and Delegate Warren Miller, if you're in 9A, which I think many of us are. So once you click on that representative, it takes you to their member page, and that has all the contact information you need for reaching out to her and connecting on whatever you're looking for. If you wanted to see her biography, it's here too. The committees are another important thing to be aware of. Again, when you, once again, that bill is introduced, it has to get through a committee. I work for Senator Clarence Lamb, who's on the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. The committee page will show you any number of bits of information, including the chair and who is on the committee. So you can see here that Senator Hester from Howard County, as well as Senator Lamb, are both on the Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. So if you have a concern about something that falls in that category of legislation, then and because they're your constituent members, they're great people to reach out to and talk to you about those bills, because they work on the committee that's going to first consider the bill and decide whether or not to forward it to the floor for consideration. You can watch meetings. There's recordings of agendas and videos of meetings that have been held by that committee that you can watch or get information on. There are sometimes subcommittees that have meetings as well. Another tab would be meetings of the General Assembly in general, and you can get scheduled by the week and see what's going on through the meetings tab. Legislation would allow you to see what legislation is current in either house and some publications. You can also look at information about the budget. Bond initiatives are something that we do locally, which is getting state money that supports public interests for capital projects or physical investments in our local area to help out on things that are important in our where we live. So you can get information on our bond initiatives through this tab. It's also really neat because if you see references while you're working to various statutes and laws, those laws and statutes are available now and you can search them on the website. That's a new feature this year, which is really helpful sometimes when there are references to laws that you can actually look it up right here on the website. We used to have to go to lots of different places for that. Floor actions have to do with actually the sessions that you think of, voting sessions and debate sessions of the whole body. So the Senate together or the House together. And during session, they meet most days. This year, I believe they'll be meeting between Tuesday and Friday. We usually have a Monday session, but I think that's not happening this year because of COVID and the virtual environment we're going to be in for session. But they'll be posted here too, where you can actually watch. This is the first year I think we'll have both houses will be video and audio. Usually it's just audio, but you can listen to debate and votes and learn more through the floor action section of the site. We didn't go into too much detail. There's another tutorial all on searching. So I'm just going to hit some highlights because I know we want to have some time for discussion. So I'll just let you know, this is the main page for searching for legislation. And like I said, on that main homepage, down here at the bottom, you'll see those videos, and there was one on searching. So if you would like to search, I would definitely recommend doing the video on searching for legislation. And it gives you some good tips on how to kind of narrow the search if you have a certain concept that you're looking for or a certain topic to narrow the search. But generally speaking, one way to do it. So currently it's defaulting to the 2021 regular session. So that means that anything you search for only relates to things that are put in for the coming session. Since it's not January yet, there isn't anything yet for that. Soon there'll be pre-files that are posted and you'll get access to those, the early bills. And then as session goes forward, all the current bills will be available through the 2021 regular session selection. You can either enter a bill number if you happen to know the bill number, or you can search for legislation by a particular sponsor, which is a delegate or a senator. So if I search for Senator Lamb and I search for the 2020 session, that was last year's session, I can pull up all the legislation that Senator Lamb proposed. This includes all the pieces of legislation. He was either a primary sponsor, meaning he was the initiator of the bill, and he and all the co-sponsored bills, which are things he supported but wasn't primarily responsible for. So it's a pretty long list. There's 127 entries for him for bills that he was associated with. About 46 of these are his bills. And you can also see that the ones that actually passed are in yellow. So if it has a chapter, the CH symbol, it means that actually this piece of legislation actually did pass last year and was passed by the governor and got a chapter number in addition to their bill numbers. All the other bills, and especially last year because we ended early, unfortunately, many of the legislators' bills did not make it. We just ran out of time and couldn't get them passed. So, but those are bills that some of us may be concerned about this coming year and might be wanting to help advocate for or reintroduce and work for because they didn't pass last year, but they might have been in good position to pass if we just had a little more time. So those are our search features. Again, there's more to searching, and I'd be happy to have another session later to work with anybody who's interested in doing a little bit more practice on searching for various pieces of legislation or past legislation or how to track things once the session is going. But generally speaking, this would be a good place to go to search. Once you search for the bills, let me go back to a bill page. If you pull up one of the bills that Senator Lamb passed, for example, so this is a vehicle height monitoring bill, you can see that this one passed. It went all the way to the governor. And like the introduction said, you can look at the fiscal note, which would have a lot of details about that bill and what it means. It's a little bit more of a layperson's explanation of the background on the bill and what it is. The bill itself will always be linked here, but it's a little bit more in legal language because it is a legal document. And then again, these videos are really helpful for looking at testimony that was submitted for the bills in the past and watching the discussion that happened about the bill. Apparently the pros and cons and what the questions were that the committee members asked. This is a new feature too this last year. All the testimony now is available on the website, which is the first time we've had this available. But if any testimony was submitted, written testimony on the bill, you can come here and you can see who testified for or against. These are favorable and unfavorable positions or just information. And then if they submitted a written testimony, you can actually open it and you have access to that too. So it's a great place to find out information on various bills or topics that you or your students are interested in. So I think I want to stop there in terms of exploring the website and go back to our presentation. So again, these are the things we kind of just went over tonight for a little bit. And again, I'm trying to give you some basic information, and hopefully if you have more questions, I'd be happy to answer them later or have another session to follow up with more details once you know a topic that you're interested in working on. I also want to make sure everybody's aware that the Maryland, Howard County Delegation to the Maryland General Assembly also does something called local legislation, which are pieces of legislation that have to go through the state General Assembly, but they're pieces of legislation that only apply to Howard County, and those are called local legislation. The Howard County website under the About HOCO tab has a state delegation page. This is the state delegation page, and some of you may have attended. We had a local bills hearing actually just this week. I think it was on Tuesday. It was the 17th. And the information for that session and the recording will be available here. And all that legislation is here on the 2021 session proposed local legislation. So these are bills that one of the members of the Howard County delegation, so one of the 3 delegates or the 9 delegates or the 3 senators have introduced these local pieces of legislation, or these are bond initiatives, requests for money from the state for public projects, for public purposes, things that are good for the community. And they all have to be considered by the delegation. There will be work sessions in January where the Howard County delegation gets together and discusses these bills. And if they pass them as a delegation, then they will go into the Maryland General Assembly and will follow that regular bill process to be passed. And they will be given what's called courtesy, usually by the state legislature, which means unless there's any kind of a particular odd circumstance where they're controversial or has some kind of special statewide implications for other counties, each of the committees and the 2 houses will generally approve those because they know the local state delegation has already approved it and submitted a support letter for that bill. So one of the bills you might be interested in on this list is by Delegate Atterbury, who has proposed a bill pertaining to the student resource officers issue, and that's this bill, Howard County 1021. And this would change the guidelines for assigning resource officers to Howard County Public Schools, which I know has been something we've talked about a lot in our county and have had several town halls with our superintendent. So if you're interested in learning more about her bill, you could go here and it would pull up that bill. And if you listen to the hearing testimony, that would explain, kind of what her position is, or what the issues are relating to that particular topic. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of the state delegation page on the Howard County website, as well as the Maryland General Assembly pages, and how you could get some information about some of the topics you might be interested in there. So my asks to our group here tonight would just be to hopefully identify your local, state, and federal representatives in one of those links that I have in this presentation. These slides will be available on our Advocacy tab under the PTSA website for Mount Hebron High School, so you'll be able to get access to these after the session. And I would definitely encourage you to try to figure out who your contacts are, and if there's anything you are curious about, or you'd like to connect with those folks and see what they're working on. If you can be helpful, this would be a great way to get engaged with them and help them on issues that they find important, or they can help you on things that you're concerned about. You could choose a topic, like if you're interested in the student resource officer issue, or something that you think is a local or statewide legislative issue. It would be great if you could think about that and see if talking to your members or talking to me about what your concern is, we can see if that's a legislative matter, or how you might get involved on that issue to get it to go in the direction that you feel it should. Another thing you can do is do a search of the state delegation or the MGA websites, or even a Google search on some of these things you've been thinking about or a topic that you're concerned about, and just get a little more information. And so again, you can talk to one of your representatives, or you can join an advocacy team here at Mount Hebron High School with me. And that would be basically if you, for example, if you're on the student resource officer issue, you really feel it's important to keep student resource officers in the schools. You could work with me and I can connect you to a team who might be interested in kind of advocating on that issue. If you would like to be on a team who really feels like you would prefer that there weren't student resource officers in the school, that they go back to community policing and aren't actually physically assigned and in the school, I can do that with you too. So I want you to feel free to email me if you have any additional questions after the session's over, and I'd be happy to help anybody who's interested in trying to work on whatever issues are concerned to you more on what we've talked about today. So, whoops. So the rest I just wanted to leave open for questions and discussion. And if there's anything more that you'd like me to go over, either that's on the website or any other topic, or I wanted to make sure we had some time to do that. So does anybody have any questions or issues that they might be interested in working on? Carolyn.
Erin.
Yep.
So I just want to walk through, because this is as new to me as it is perhaps to the other people watching this presentation. So can you go back to your second to last slide, the one before that says questions? So let's say I'm a student and I get together with a couple friends and I say, you know what, we need more support services for mental health. You know, young people and mental health, it's a huge issue right now with COVID. We want to see how we can, you know, what's going on. We need more from our government. What can we do to make that happen? So it sounds like the first thing we're going to want to do is identify who our government representatives are at all of the levels, right? County, state, and federal.
Right.
We've chosen our topic. Our topic is mental health. Then we do some research. We see what already exists. Is that what we would do? Like, we would do a topic search on mental health.
Right. So yeah, I would definitely say that probably the easiest way to get started maybe would be, we could start with Christina Delmont Small, who's on the Board of Education, and say, I'm concerned about mental health services. It depends if we're talking about students or if we're talking about just you're concerned about mental health availability of services for the community at large. If it's for the community at large, then maybe the Board of Education would be a call you would make, but that you might also want to talk to from my district. I'm a District 1, so that'd be Representative Council Member Liz Walsh. I would also touch base with her office and say, I have this concern and I'm interested in knowing whether, you know, the County Council is preparing any legislation to try to address mental health services or increase those or improve them, and see what she says, whether she might have a piece of legislation related to that. She definitely would know the different groups in your community, advocacy groups or folks who are concerned on mental health, that she might also connect you with and say, you know, you might want to talk with this group, you know, that does advocacy on in Howard County for mental health services. And then you might want to connect with them. Maybe you wouldn't go after or need to go into learning about legislation particularly, but you might get involved with your local nonprofit that deals with preventive mental health services and providing extra support. Those folks probably do some legislation as well, but they do that maybe for a living, you know, and they specialize in that area. So that means you would be getting and becoming maybe a member of that group, maybe a nonprofit that you might join as a member and start keeping track of emails on what they're doing and what their efforts are, and just start to learn more about that topic. and meet people who work on it, which is a big part of advocacy is meeting people and building relationships with other people in a particular area of interest to you. And then invariably, some of that will, at least on an annual basis at the state legislature, will bring up some issues that those groups are really supporting, you know, and really pushing to get funding for that at the state level, or to get changes in certain policies to make people better off in terms of mental health services. So they can really help fine tune kind of how you can help. And then they can often identify a few bills. Like for example, the PTSA has a Maryland State PTSA website, and it has an advocacy tab, and it includes a list of bills that are actually federal bills that they've given testimony for. So you can see those bills and you can get an idea of what things, at least at the national level, the Maryland State PTSA has supported, and it kind of explains why. And I'm sure there's some bills in there that have to do with probably mental health services, and that would give you kind of an idea of some of the policies or some of the groups that might be involved in that topic as well. So I definitely think there's various ways to go about it. And I think a good way probably to start is maybe just getting in touch with local representatives, but also your delegates. So your delegates and your senator, you could just put all 4 of those folks in an email and send a note to them with your questions of like, I'm concerned about this. I'd like to know what maybe you're doing, or what's current this legislative session, or what kinds of things you've introduced recently that would be helpful in that direction that maybe didn't get passed yet. And maybe I'd like you to reintroduce that, or I'd like you to work on that more. Maybe they'll direct you to another friend of theirs who has a bill that's in that area that's not your personal representative, but they can say, oh, you know what, Delegate, or Senator Kagan from Montgomery County actually has a bill on public health in that particular area. Maybe you can submit testimony on her bill. It's a statewide bill. It would affect everybody. So sometimes it's referring to the right teams that would be working on those issues. And then during the session, it would be great if folks could submit written or oral testimony. And this year we have slightly different procedures for testimony too, because it is virtual this year. We're not going to be having large groups coming live down to the Annapolis this year, which is different because of COVID. For safety reasons, everything's going to be conducted online. So the meetings will be online and testimony can be submitted online. And there will be some people who will have a chance to do oral testimony, but a little bit less than usual at the General Assembly, because with the new restrictions, we're going to have a little bit more limits on bills, the number of bills, and also on the number of people testifying. But if you connect with your legislator, they can help get you on the slate and help you get signed up to submit testimony. And testimony is really just you either writing a letter or a short statement that you're going to say to the committee about why you want a particular bill, or why this issue is important to you, or how you personally connect. A lot of times it's people with personal stories. For example, somebody for like mental health services might have a story about someone who had a mental health condition and they really needed certain services and maybe they didn't get them, and that you really want this law passed because this would help that person that's personal to you get the services that they need. So personal testimonies are really important for passing legislation. And that's an important kind of activity that we can, once we get educated on an issue and feel we have a certain thing we want to happen, to make sure that our voices are heard. Voting is one way to make your voice heard, but also participating in public hearings and submitting testimony on legislation is another way to make your voice heard.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for your question. We still have some time. So was there anybody else who had another maybe topic or something they were interested in getting out of tonight's session that I can offer?
Okay, something just popped up in the chat. Do you know if any local or state legislation has been passed about switching to clean or renewable energy?
Clean or renewable energy, okay. All right, so in terms of local legislation, we would have to go to the county council to see if there were anything on that level. If I was going to go look at the state level, there are definitely every year, there are definitely multiple bills that relate to clean energy. I'm not familiar with, Senator Lamb doesn't have one personally for our team at this point. So I would probably at this point begin to, I'm sorry, am I still sharing my screen here?
Yes.
I'm going to try to move over to my web page again here. Ooh, doesn't want to take me now. Oops. I'm just going to go over to the search page here. So I would probably at this point, if I wanted to figure out maybe last year, which legislation, I'm sure there was legislation on clean energy that probably didn't pass because of our timeline. So I would go and look at maybe the 2020 session, and you can go down under subjects and you can select a topic. So that would be one way to search. There's a couple ways to search for energy, or let's see if clean energy comes up. So environmental matters, conservation, natural resources, and pollution might have topics related to that. So you can do a search and that'll give you a list. There are ways to narrow the search too, but this would be one. Let's see. Clean cars, clean and renewable energy. So these were both bills that were introduced, and let's just go to clean and renewable energy standards, the CARES Act, well, related to CARES. There was a House and a Senate bill. It got to committee, but didn't get out of committee. So the first thing you could do is, this was submitted by the Speaker, actually. So that was sponsored by the Speaker of the House, which is Adrian Jones. So that would be a topic where we could go talk to, we could contact the legislator who's the sponsor. So this speaker would be the sponsor. Or if one of our delegates from our district was on the list, you could get more information from that member to see if they were going to reintroduce this bill this year, or what you might be able to do to help get this passed. So that would be the next step on this one, would be to look into some of the bills that come up when you search for that environmental policies and things related to energy, and you could go through and just look at the titles and the descriptions to see what fits what you're looking for, or what sounds interesting, and what kinds of things might have been introduced by various members last year. And again, when they're yellow like this and they have a chapter number, that means it did pass, so it already passed. So you can see kind of like the Bay Restoration Fund already passed, and there'll be descriptions there you can see about what happened. But if it's gray, it means it didn't actually pass, and it could be reintroduced this year to try again. And it's very common for legislation to have to go in multiple sessions before it's actually passed, because it has to be discussed, and especially environmental legislation that might have cost implications. If it would cost money to do the program, or if it costs the state, they would lose money trying to do the program, or has business implications. Sometimes it takes several years to kind of work on those projects. And that's why it's good for us to get engaged in between session to try to work with our members or groups to try to get those passed. The other cool thing is, once you have a bill like this where there was testimony on a topic, let me go back down. So if you pull back up this bill again, when you go into the bill, you'll see the witness list. And again, this will have testimony that was given last year, and you can look for the ones that were favorable, for example, and you can look at what the testimony was in favor of this particular bill, and look at kind of the what the proposal was and why the folks in favor of it, who they were, first of all, so you can tell which groups were supporting that. And if you like the bill too, you can go back to one of these groups and say, I support this bill. Are you going to do this again this year? Or you can get involved that way to figure out kind of how you might be able to engage and help on that issue. I don't want to go over too much on our time. So were there other issues? I'm not sure. Was that helpful? Did that answer the question in terms of kind of how to find some of the clean energy bills? Also doing searches just on Google on the topic for Maryland clean energy legislation or something like that often will bring you up several bills that were in the news. So the ones that were more prominent or significant will sometimes be in Google, searches on news articles. And if you find one that sounds like a topic that you're interested in, or a particular area of clean energy, that'll give you the bill numbers. And then you can go back to the bill numbers, find them, and then talk to, again, your state legislators, your delegates, or your senator, and say, this was introduced last year. Are you supporting this bill? And is there anything you can do to help this bill? Can I get connected somehow through your group to kind of promote this? I really think it's a good idea. Or just telling your member that when they get a chance to vote too, if this comes up for a vote for them, that you want them to vote for it. So some of that's also getting educated and just sending a message through an email or a phone call to your legislator to say, you know, if this is going to be introduced this session, I think it's a great idea. I think you should support it. And that does help our members know that they have support among their constituents for various bills, so that they have a better sense of how to vote on things that they're going to consider on the floor of the House or the Senate.
Oh, wait.
You have another question?
Chat said yes, that answered the question.
Thank you. All right, well, I'm glad. I know we're trying to cover a lot of ground, and I know I love this stuff and I'm really into all the details. But I know if you don't do it on a regular basis, or it's really not your thing particularly, you're more interested in the clean energy and not so much how the General Assembly works. It's more of a means to an end. So, but I would be happy to help with the means if you have an end in mind. So feel free
Aaron,
to.
would you put up that slide again that has your email address on the bottom?
Yep, definitely.
Maybe just so folks can take a screenshot before, you know, until the slides are posted.
Sure.
Up. So Aaron's available.
So I'm here. So I'm at one vice president at MT Hebron PTSA.com. And we'll make sure we put these up on the PTSA website, and we have an advocacy tab on there now, and that's where we'll be putting information about advocacy and teams. So as you're doing research, if you have more specific questions, or if you want to try to start getting connected or advocating on a particular position where you've done some research and you're pretty sure you know what you feel about a certain topic, then I'd be happy to help you get connected, and we'll do a little more work to figure out what legislation would make sense to kind of get connected on, and then which legislator that might be best to help you kind of work on that.
Well, thank you so much. I can't believe we have this priceless resource at our school, on our PTSA board. This has been really eye-opening. There's a lot of information out there. I think everyone just needs to sit back and define their issue and then get to work, right? There's a lot of research, phone calls, emails, networking, and getting educated, and then making change where change needs to happen. So
I like it. I've definitely done a lot of community activity. I engage it. I'm the coordinator for Howard County Peace Action. So we do work related to military spending and peace oriented activities and community projects, and also, you know, engage in the PTSA, which is one of our civic organizations. It's a great way to meet other people and talk about things we feel strongly about, and then to you know, get organized and make sure we tell our representatives what we want, and make sure that they know we can support them too when they're working on legislation. They need our help too. It's hard to pass legislation unless they have constituent support. So if there are any issues that you can keep track of just by watching the news and then sending messages to your legislator throughout the session about legislation you like and legislation you don't, and if there's particular stuff that comes up you feel really strongly about, then that's a great time to get engaged and get a little more active, and maybe do some testimony or share things on Facebook about things that you're in support of, and you know, get folks aware that the hearings are happening and that folks should call their legislators about that to support it or be against it, you know, both ways. So I just hope we can all do that, and that if anybody needs help doing that because they're interested or wants to have a follow-up session to learn more, get into the weeds a little bit more about figuring out some details, I'm certainly available if anybody would like to work with me some more in the future.
excellent. Thank you so much for putting this presentation together for us, for your time this evening. Thank you everyone who joined us. We are also going to make this recording available on the PTSA website, and it's been streaming on Facebook Live. So we'll have this recording also as a resource for us to refer back to.
That's great. And I'm really excited that you guys came and that you're willing to listen to this. I know it's a lot to kind of absorb and get your head around, but I do really think it's a great activity. I've met lots of great people doing community activism and legislative work, and it feels really good when you get things passed at the end and you feel like we're making progress. We all watch the news and sometimes it gets kind of intense and depressing. And I think community activism and engagement and working on legislation with members and with our teams is a great way to feel like like we're actually making positive progress, because there's lots of positive progress that's made at the General Assembly and our local boards and communities, as well as the things that we don't agree on and can't quite come to, move forward on. But there's lots of good stuff. And I feel like we get lots of exposure to that at the General Assembly. So if you're interested in a little more positive kind of activity for democracy or civic engagement, I think this is a good way to do it. And certainly the PTSA is. So I appreciate your coming just to listen and work with us on what we're doing.
Thank you so much, everyone. We're signing off. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.